Close your eyes for a moment and picture 7 extraordinary creations from a world long vanished. Think of towering statues reaching for the heavens, gardens hanging among the clouds, and tombs so magnificent they defy mortal imagination. These are the 7 wonders of the ancient world, not just structures of stone and bronze, but monuments to human ambition, ingenuity, and the timeless desire to touch the divine. For thousands of years, their legends have lingered in our collective memory, capturing our curiosity and stirring our souls with a blend of historical fact and enduring mystery. Now let's travel back through time, across dusty trade routes and sun-drenched coastlines, to an age when these marvels defined what humanity could achieve. Imagine standing before the colossal statue of Zeus at Olympia, feeling small in its shadow, or walking through the lush, terraced beauty of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, a place so wondrous some doubted it ever existed. These weren't just tourist attractions, they were symbols of power, devotion, and artistry, built in a world without cranes or computers, where vision alone lifted stone upon stone toward the sky. Yet today, only one of these legendary wonders remains standing. The others live on in fragments, stories, and the echoes of ancient awe. What secrets do these wonders still hold? How did civilizations with simple tools accomplish such breathtaking feats? And why, after all these centuries, do their stories continue to haunt and inspire us? In this video, we're embarking on a journey to uncover the magic behind these legendary monuments. Together, we'll explore not just what was built, but why, tracing the dreams, the drama, and the sheer human spirit that turned stone and myth into eternal legend. So settle in, open your imagination, and let's wander through the echoes of greatness. Of all the ancient wonders, one stands apart not just in its grandeur, but in its defiance of time itself. While the others faded into myth and memory, the Great Pyramid of Giza remains a silent, stoic giant on the desert plateau. It's the oldest of the 7 wonders and the only one we can still visit, touch, and stand in awe of today. But its enduring presence only deepens the central mystery. How did an ancient civilization over 4,500 years ago build something of such staggering scale and precision with nothing but copper tools, ropes, and human ingenuity? The numbers alone are enough to boggle the mind. Originally standing at 481 feet tall, the Great Pyramid was the tallest man-made structure in the world for nearly 4,000 years. It's composed of an estimated 2.3 million limestone blocks, each weighing an average of 2.5 tons. That's like stacking the entire population of a major modern city, each person carrying a small car into a perfectly symmetrical mountain. But the true marvel isn't just the weight, it's the almost supernatural precision. The 4 sides of its base are aligned almost perfectly with the 4 cardinal directions north, south, east, and west, with an error margin of less than 1/15 of a degree. This isn't just good guesswork, it's a level of astronomical and geometric understanding that seems to belong to a far more advanced age. How did they achieve such accuracy? Many Egyptologists believe the ancient builders used the stars as their guide, perhaps sighting on the circumpolar stars that never set, like Kochab and Mizar, to find true north. The pyramid's descending passageways are also precisely aligned to point directly at the pole star of its time, Alpha Draconis, serving as a permanent celestial clock frozen in stone. The entire structure feels less like a simple tomb and more like a monumental machine engineered to connect the earthly realm with the heavens above. And then comes the greatest question of all: how did they move all that stone? The prevailing theory involves a massive ramp system spiraling around the rising structure, but the exact design remains a hotly debated puzzle. Some suggest a straight ramp, others a zigzagging one, and more recent theories even propose an internal ramp hidden within the pyramid's core. We know the stones were likely dragged on sleds, possibly wetting the sand in front of them to reduce friction, as depicted in ancient tomb paintings. But the coordination, the logistics of feeding, housing, and organizing a workforce of thousands for decades, this was a project management feat that would challenge even the greatest modern corporations. Perhaps that's the real wonder of the Great Pyramid. It's not just a pile of rocks, it's a testament to what human beings can accomplish with a unified vision, relentless determination, and an intimate knowledge of their world. It's a reminder that the ancients were not primitive. They were masters of their environment with a sophisticated understanding of mathematics, astronomy, and engineering that we are still struggling to fully comprehend. It stands as the last sentinel of a lost world, whispering secrets we have yet to fully unravel. But if the Great Pyramid is a monument to what we can still see and touch, our next wonder invites us into a world of pure imagination. A place so enchanting, so seemingly impossible, that its very existence has been questioned for centuries. We're talking, of course, about the legendary Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Ancient writers described them in breathless detail, a magnificent series of ascending terraces, overflowing with lush trees, vibrant flowers, and exotic plants, seemingly suspended in the air above the dusty Mesopotamian plains. They were said to be a gift of love from the powerful King Nebuchadnezzar II to his homesick wife, Ambience, who longed for the green, mountainous landscapes of her homeland. It's a beautiful story, a royal promise carved into the earth itself. But here's the captivating mystery that has puzzled historians and archaeologists for generations. Did they ever truly exist, or are they the most beautiful mirage in human history? The primary evidence comes from a handful of ancient Greek and Roman writers who described the gardens centuries after they supposedly flourished. The most detailed account comes from a 1st century BCE historian named Diodorus Siculus, who painted a vivid picture of stone terraces built like a theater, rising tier upon tier to a great height, with a complex system of screws and pumps drawing water from the Euphrates River to the very top, allowing it to cascade down in refreshing streams to nourish the roots of every plant. It was an engineering masterpiece, an artificial mountain of life in the middle of a flat, arid kingdom. The problem is, none of the extensive Babylonian records from Nebuchadnezzar's own time ever mention these gardens. Not a single cuneiform tablet, royal inscription, or economic document refers to this colossal, water-intensive project. It's a stunning silence that has led many scholars to wonder if the entire tale was an ancient traveler's exaggeration, a piece of propaganda, or a romantic legend that got mistaken for fact. This absence of proof has sparked one of history's most fascinating detective stories. Some researchers propose a stunning solution. Perhaps the gardens were real, but they weren't in Babylon at all. A compelling theory suggests the gardens were actually built a few centuries earlier in the Assyrian city of Nineveh by a king named Sennacherib. Cuneiform records from his reign boast of a massive aqueduct system and a palace without a rival, with descriptions of towering gardens watered by innovative bronze screws, a technology that matches the Greek accounts perfectly. It's possible that over centuries, the story simply got relocated to the more famous city of Babylon, blurring the lines between history and hearsay. Whether in Babylon or Nineveh, the concept itself reveals the incredible ambition of ancient engineers. To keep such a structure alive would have required a hydraulic system far ahead of its time. Imagine the effort. Thousands of gallons of water had to be lifted from the river to the highest terrace every single day, likely using a chain pump system where buckets were continuously cycled upward. The structure would have needed a formidable foundation to support the immense weight of soil, trees, and water, with layers of reeds, tar, and lead sheeting to waterproof the terraces and prevent destructive seepage into the brickwork below. This wasn't just a garden, it was a breathtaking defiance of nature, a statement that human will could create paradise anywhere, even in the heart of a desert. The debate over its location may never be fully settled, but the enduring power of the idea itself is a wonder all its own. Stepping away from the botanical mysteries of Babylon, we find ourselves in the hallowed sanctuary of Olympia, a place not of growing things but of soaring human spirit. Here, amidst the tense quiet before the ancient Olympic Games, athletes would make their way to a temple not just to pray, but to stand in the presence of a god. Inside, seated on a magnificent throne of cedar wood, gold, and precious gems, was the statue of Zeus, a creation so awe-inspiring that ancient writers claimed a single glimpse could soothe the most troubled soul. This was the masterwork of the sculptor Phidias, who had already earned fame for the statue of Athena in the Parthenon. But Zeus was his ultimate challenge, to give physical form to the king of the gods, the ruler of sky and thunder, in a way that would feel utterly real and overwhelmingly divine. The scale of the statue was, in a word, colossal. Ancient sources tell us it stood over 40 feet tall. If Zeus were to stand up, they said, he would lift the very roof off the temple. But it was the materials that truly defined its splendor. This was a Chryselephantine statue, a term meaning it was crafted from plates of gleaming gold and shimmering ivory. The god's robe and sandals were fashioned from gold, while his exposed skin, his powerful chest, arms, and face was made from carefully sculpted ivory, giving him a lifelike, ethereal glow. His eyes were made of glittering jewels, and in his right hand he held a small statue of Nike, the goddess of victory, crafted from ivory and gold. In his left hand he grasped a magnificent scepter topped with an eagle, his sacred messenger. The throne itself was a masterpiece of art, inlaid with ebony and ivory and decorated with painted scenes and sculpted figures from mythology. The entire effect was designed to be overpowering, to make any mortal who entered feel both privileged and profoundly humble in the face of such divine majesty. For nearly 800 years, the statue presided over the Olympic Games, the ultimate silent referee. Athletes from across the Greek world came to make sacrifices and pledge their oaths before it, seeking the favor of the god they believed was literally watching over them. It wasn't merely a tourist attraction, it was the very heart of the sanctuary's religious power. The statue transformed the temple from a building into a genuine dwelling place for a deity, a focal point for the worship and wonder of an entire civilization. Its fame spread so far and wide that it became a pilgrimage site, with many people of the ancient world believing that no one could truly be said to have lived until they had looked upon the face of Zeus at Olympia. But the fate of this divine masterpiece is shrouded in as much mystery as its creation was brilliance. Sometime in the 5th century AD, the statue was allegedly transported from Olympia to Constantinople, the new capital of the Roman Empire. The reasons are unclear, perhaps for safekeeping, perhaps as a trophy. The most persistent story recounted by historians of the time is that it was destroyed in a great fire in the year 475 AD. Other, more colorful legends suggest it was lost in a later fire in the year 565, or that it was carried away to an unknown fate when the temple at Olympia was finally closed by imperial decree. There's even a tantalizing, though unlikely, story that a wealthy Greek magnate purchased the statue and shipped its remains to his estate, only to have them lost in a shipwreck. The truth is, we simply don't know. No parts of the statue have ever been found. Its existence is confirmed only by descriptions on ancient coins, the accounts of travelers, and the discovery of Phidias's workshop at Olympia, where archaeologists found a cup bearing the inscription, "I belong to Phidias." The statue itself has vanished without a physical trace, leaving behind only the echo of its glory in the words of those who were lucky enough to have seen it. Its disappearance feels almost fitting for a god. Having bestowed his grandeur upon the world for centuries, he simply withdrew, leaving mortals with nothing but a memory of sublime beauty and a lesson on the fragile nature of even our greatest creations. While the statue of Zeus offered a glimpse of divine power in a single, awe-inspiring form, Our next wonder was a different kind of sanctuary altogether, a temple so vast, so opulent, and so deeply revered that it was not just built once, but raised from its own ashes again and again. Journey with us now to the bustling, cosmopolitan city of Ephesus, a jewel of the ancient Ionian coast, where stood the magnificent Temple of Artemis. To call it a mere building would be a profound understatement. It was a legend in marble and gold, a testament to human devotion that became famous for its sheer scale and beauty. Ancient accounts describe a structure that stretched over 400 feet in length, supported by a forest of 127 soaring marble columns, each intricately carved and standing 60 feet high. Its interior was a treasure house of unimaginable wealth, filled with exquisite sculptures, paintings, and offerings from kings and commoners who sought the favor of the great goddess. The central statue of Artemis herself was not the graceful hunter known to the Greeks, but a more ancient, powerful deity, adorned with multiple rows of what might be eggs or bull's testicles, symbols of fertility and life. This was more than architecture. It was a declaration of faith, a center of commerce, and a symbol of civic pride that drew visitors from across the known world. The temple's history is a dramatic cycle of destruction and rebirth, a story of resilience that makes its final loss even more poignant. The first great temple was commissioned around the 5th century BCE by the wealthy King Croesus of Lydia, whose name is still synonymous with immense wealth. That initial marvel was itself built on the site of even older sanctuaries, but it met a catastrophic end in 356 BCE, not by earthquake or war, but by a single man's desperate bid for immortality. His name was Herostratus, and on a fateful night he set fire to the wooden roof beams, reducing the glorious temple to a smoldering ruin. When captured, he openly confessed his motive. He wanted his name to be remembered forever, no matter the cost. The horrified Ephesians, seeking to thwart his vile ambition, decreed that his name should be erased from all official records and never spoken again. They even instituted a law forbidding anyone from mentioning it, but the plan backfired spectacularly. The notoriety of the crime was simply too great. Writers like the historian Theopompus, recording the event, preserved the name Herostratus for posterity, ensuring the arsonist achieved the infamous fame he so craved and giving us the term herostratic fame for anyone who seeks recognition through destructive acts. Yet the story does not end with ashes. The people of Ephesus, utterly devoted to their goddess, immediately vowed to rebuild, and this time they would make it even grander. They poured their resources and their hearts into the project, and the new Temple of Artemis became the wonder that entered the ancient lists. It was this version that boasted the breathtaking marble columns and the expansive size that left visitors like Antipater of Sidon, who compiled the first list of wonders, to declare that merely to look upon it was to see all the other wonders pale in comparison. It stood as a beacon of perseverance for centuries, a functioning religious center where priests and priestesses conducted rituals and a safe haven for refugees seeking asylum, its sanctity respected even by conquering armies. But the world was changing. With the rise of Christianity, the old pagan worship declined, and the temple's vast stones were gradually quarried to build churches, homes, and fortifications. The final blows likely came from Gothic raids and river silt that slowly buried the forgotten site, until all that remained was a single, reconstructed column to mark where a wonder once stood, a solitary finger pointing at the sky, reminding us that even the greatest monuments are subject to the relentless tide of time and the fragile nature of human memory. Meanwhile, in the bustling coastal city of Halicarnassus, a different kind of monument was taking shape, one born not from devotion to a goddess, but from the immense personal ambition of a single man. This is the story of the Mausoleum, a tomb so grand, so audaciously ornate, that it broke from all tradition and forever changed the way we remember our dead. It was built for Mausoleus, a Persian satrap or governor who ruled this corner of Asia Minor with his powerful and devoted wife, Artemisia. Though he served a distant Persian emperor, Mausoleus was thoroughly influenced by Greek culture, and he dreamed of leaving behind a legacy that would fuse the grandeur of the East with the artistic elegance of the West. He envisioned a final resting place that was not a hidden burial chamber, but a towering public celebration of his life and power, set right in the heart of his capital city. Tragically, he died in 353 BCE, never seeing his dream realized, but Artemisia, heartbroken yet fiercely determined, took up the mantle. Her profound grief and love for her husband fueled an unprecedented building project, and she spared no expense to ensure his tomb would be the greatest the world had ever seen. What made the mausoleum a true wonder was its breathtaking fusion of architectural styles, a masterpiece of creative synthesis. It wasn't just a tomb, it was a layered symphony in stone. The structure rose from a massive rectangular base, a solid podium that itself was said to be as large as a city block. On top of this stood a colonnade of 36 majestic Ionic columns, a distinctly Greek feature, creating a graceful, open-air temple. Above this colonnade soared a pyramid-shaped roof, a 24-step design that echoed the grand tombs of ancient Egypt. And crowning this entire magnificent ensemble was a colossal marble statue of a four-horse chariot, with larger-than-life sculptures of Mausoleus and Artemisia standing proudly within it, forever gazing out over their kingdom. This blending of Greek, Egyptian, and Near Eastern elements was revolutionary. It declared that cultural boundaries were meant to be crossed, and that true greatness could be found in the harmonious union of the world's best ideas. The entire monument was then brought to life by a dream team of sculptors, each reportedly hired to decorate one of the four sides. The most famous of these artists were Scopas, Bryaxis, Timotheus, and Leochares, masters whose individual styles were somehow woven into a cohesive and spectacular whole. They filled every available space with a stunning array of sculptural reliefs and freestanding figures depicting scenes from Greek mythology, battles with Amazons, and dramatic chariot races. These weren't mere decorations, they were a visual narrative of power, heroism, and divine favor, telling all who looked upon it that the man buried within was a figure of legendary status. The term mausoleum, which we now use for any grand above-ground tomb, is the direct and enduring legacy of this one structure, a permanent linguistic tribute to its unique impact. For nearly 17 centuries, this wonder stood as a testament to love and ambition, surviving the fall of empires and the shifting sands of time. Its ultimate downfall began not with human hands, but with a series of devastating earthquakes between the 12th and 15th centuries that shattered the columns and sent the stone chariot crashing to the ground. The final blow, however, was delivered by the Knights of St. John, who occupied the area in the 1400s. Facing the threat of an invasion, they needed stone to fortify their castle. They found a ready-made quarry in the ruins of the magnificent tomb, systematically dismantling it and using its sculpted blocks to build their walls. In a strange twist of fate, some of the finest reliefs, including those depicting the battle between the Greeks and the Amazons, were placed face inward within the ramparts, inadvertently preserving them from centuries of weathering. These very fragments were rediscovered by archaeologists in the 19th century and can be seen today in the British Museum, silent, broken witnesses to a wonder that was literally taken apart to build a fortress, its memory surviving only in fragments and the word it gave to the world. Leaving behind the grounded, earthly wonders of tombs and temples, we arrive at the harbor of Rhodes, where ambition literally reached for the heavens. Here, for a fleeting 56 years, a bronze giant stood sentinel, its legs straddling the entrance to the busy port, its head brushing the clouds. This was the Colossus of Rhodes, a statue of the sun god Helios that was so massive, so audacious in its scale, that it redefined the very limits of what was possible in art and engineering. Its story begins not with peace but with war. In 305 BCE, the people of Rhodes faced a massive siege from Demetrius Poliorcetes, a powerful successor to Alexander the Great. Despite being massively outnumbered, the Rhodians fought with such fierce determination that Demetrius was forced to abandon his year-long campaign, retreating and leaving behind a treasure trove of siege equipment. To celebrate their improbable victory and honor their patron god, the Rhodians decided to use the spoils of war for a project of breathtaking peace. They would melt down the abandoned bronze weapons and war machines and forge them into a permanent symbol of their resilience and gratitude. The task of bringing this giant to life fell to a master sculptor named Chares of Lindos, a student of the famed Lysippos. The engineering challenge he faced was unprecedented. This was not a stone figure carved from a mountainside. This was a hollow giant to be constructed from bronze plates hammered over an intricate internal skeleton of iron and stone. Imagine the process. A colossal wooden scaffold was erected first, serving as the armature. Workers then hoisted the pre-formed bronze plates, each one weighing many tons, into place and fastened them to the iron bars embedded within the stone and brick core. The statue grew slowly from the ground up, with the workers effectively entombing the scaffolding inside the growing form. The project was so vast that ancient accounts claim it took 12 years to complete and required so much bronze that it nearly exhausted the entire supply from Demetrius's abandoned war machines. When it was finally finished around 280 BCE, the Colossus stood approximately 110 feet tall, a figure so immense that few could grasp its scale. A popular legend, though almost certainly untrue, claimed that ships could sail between its legs. While this is a physical impossibility given the harbor's width and the need for structural stability, the very persistence of the myth speaks volumes about the sheer, overwhelming impression the statue made on all who saw it. For more than half a century, the Colossus stood as the defining symbol of Rhodes, a marvel of human ingenuity and a testament to the island's independence. But its reign was brief. In 226 BC, a powerful earthquake struck the island, snapping the statue at its most vulnerable point, its knees. The giant came crashing down, breaking into enormous pieces. The Oracle of Delphi, when consulted by the horrified Rhodians, warned them not to rebuild it, declaring that its fall had displeased the god Helios. So the ruins lay where they fell for an astonishing 800 years, becoming a tourist attraction in their own right. Ancient writers like Pliny the Elder visited the site and reported that even in fragments the statue was astounding. Few people could wrap their arms around its fallen thumb, and each of its broken fingers was larger than most entire statues. The final chapter of the Colossus is one of quiet disappearance. In the mid-7th century AD, with Rhodes under Arab rule, a Muslim caliph named Muawiyah I captured the island. Needing metal and seeing the bronze rubble as a valuable resource rather than a historical treasure, his forces reportedly sold the remains to a traveling merchant. The story goes that it took a caravan of 900 camels to carry all the fragments away to be melted down, forever erasing the physical giant from the world. And so the Colossus lives on not in metal or stone, but in something perhaps more powerful, its legacy. It gave us our word colossal, and its image, however imagined, has become a universal symbol of lofty ambition and the fleeting nature of even our grandest achievements. It stands as a ghost in our collective memory, a reminder that some wonders are so powerful, they don't need to be physically present to capture our imagination for millennia. Our journey now brings us to the final wonder, a structure that was not a tomb, a statue, or a temple to a god, but a brilliant, practical beacon of human knowledge and safety, the Lighthouse of Alexandria. While other wonders were built for glory or the afterlife, the Pharos, as it was known, served the living, guiding sailors through treacherous waters and into one of the ancient world's greatest centers of learning. Commissioned by Ptolemy I around 280 BCE, just after the death of Alexander the Great, and completed by his son Ptolemy II, the lighthouse was a monumental feat of engineering that would stand as the tallest building in the world for centuries, save only for the Great Pyramid. Its brilliant design became the model for every lighthouse that followed, and its name, Pharos, is still the root word for lighthouse in several languages, a permanent linguistic tribute to its enduring influence. What set the Pharos apart was its revolutionary three-tiered design, a masterpiece of form-meeting function. The lowest section was a massive square base, built from light-colored stone and containing hundreds of rooms that likely served as barracks for soldiers, storage for fuel, and housing for the teams of workers and cart drivers who kept the beacon burning. From this sturdy foundation rose a second octagonal tower and finally, a cylindrical top where the vital fire blazed. A broad spiral ramp wound its way up through the interior, allowing donkeys to haul carts of wood and possibly naphtha or olive oil, all the way to the summit to feed the great flame. At the very peak stood a massive statue, likely of Poseidon or Zeus, though ancient sources disagree, watching over the sea. But the true marvel of engineering was not the fire itself, but the genius of its amplification. Ancient texts describe a gigantic polished bronze mirror, a complex parabolic reflector that could project the fire's light an astonishing distance, some claimed over 30 miles out to sea. This gave rise to its most legendary and likely mythical attribute, the belief that the mirror was so powerful it could focus the sun's rays to a point so intense it could spot and burn enemy ships long before they reached the harbor. While this is almost certainly an embellishment, the very fact that such a story persisted speaks to the awe this technology inspired. It was a symbol of Alexandria itself, a city of enlightened science, using optics and geometry to tame the natural world for human benefit. For well over 1,000 years, the Lighthouse of Alexandria stood as a guardian of the Mediterranean, its flame a symbol of safe haven, knowledge, and the interconnectedness of the ancient world. It withstood the rise and fall of empires from the Ptolemies to the Romans and beyond, but its downfall was a slow, grinding process caused by the relentless force of nature. A series of earthquakes between the 10th and 14th centuries gradually chipped away at its structural integrity. The first, in 956 AD, caused damage to the top sections. Another in 1303 did more severe harm, and a final, powerful quake in 1323 reduced the once proud structure to a complete ruin. The stones that remained were then incorporated into a medieval fortress built on the original site by Sultan Qaitbay in the 1400s, a citadel that still stands today. For centuries, the physical remains of the lighthouse were believed to be lost to history, swallowed by the sea. But in the 1990s, underwater archaeologists began finding clues. Diving in the harbor, they discovered enormous stone blocks, statues of sphinxes and pharaohs, and other fragments that had tumbled into the water, likely from the successive quakes. These discoveries have allowed us to piece together a more complete picture of this final wonder, a structure that perfectly blended practical science with majestic ambition, a sentinel of light whose legacy continues to guide our understanding of the ancient world's incredible capabilities. Yet the most fascinating question isn't how these wonders were built, but why these 7, above all others, were chosen to be remembered. The very idea of a definitive list, a must-see collection of the ancient world's greatest hits, is itself a product of a specific time and place. The earliest known lists were compiled by Greek writers and poets like Antipater of Sidon and Philo of Byzantium, traveling scholars and storytellers living in the 2nd and 1st centuries BCE. This was the Hellenistic period, an era defined by the vast, interconnected empire forged by Alexander the Great. Greek culture, language, and ideas had spread from the Aegean Sea all the way to the borders of India, creating a common cultural playground for the educated elite. These lists weren't just travel guides, they were a form of cultural bragging rights, a way for Greek intellectuals to celebrate the achievements of the world they now dominated, and to which they felt spiritually connected. It's no coincidence that most of the wonders existed within or on the very edges of this sprawling Greek-influenced world, from the pyramids at its southern fringe to the Mausoleum in the east. This list was in many ways a Hellenistic perspective on global greatness, a map of marvels seen through Greek eyes. When we look at the types of structures selected, a clear pattern of values emerges, revealing what these ancient cultures and the Greeks who admired them prized most highly. These were not merely functional buildings, they were profound statements of identity. We see an overwhelming obsession with the divine and the afterlife. The Temple of Artemis and the Statue of Zeus were direct conduits to the gods, designed to inspire awe and facilitate worship. The pyramids and the Mausoleum were monumental declarations of belief in an existence beyond death, one where a ruler's power and legacy would continue for eternity. The list also celebrates immense personal ambition and political power. The Mausoleum was the vanity project of a single ruler, the Hanging Gardens a legendary gift of love from a king to his queen, and the Colossus a massive piece of political propaganda celebrating a military victory. They were tools of soft power designed to impress visitors, intimidate rivals, and immortalize a dynasty's name in stone and legend. Perhaps the most consistent value on display, however, is a boundless confidence in human ingenuity, the belief that with enough willpower, coordination, and cleverness, humanity could literally reshape the world. Each wonder represents a massive leap in engineering and artistic technique. The pharaohs of Egypt masterminded the logistics of quarrying, transporting, and assembling millions of stone blocks. The builders of the Mausoleum synthesized multiple architectural styles into a breathtaking new form. The sculptors of the Zeus statue perfected the difficult chryselephantine technique to make ivory and gold resemble living flesh. The engineers of the lighthouse and the legendary gardens solved complex problems of hydraulics, optics, and structural support. These were civilizations pushing the very boundaries of what was technically possible, using the tools and materials they had to create the seemingly impossible. They were showing off, yes, but in doing so, they were proving that humanity was not subject to the whims of nature, but could instead command it. The list of wonders, therefore, is far more than a tourist brochure. It is a lasting testament to the core drives that have always propelled humanity forward. Our need to connect with the divine, our desire to be remembered, and our relentless, awe-inspiring urge to build. The true magic of these ancient wonders lies not just in their final, breathtaking forms, but in the staggering human effort and brilliant ingenuity required to bring them into existence. Without modern machinery, computers, or power tools, ancient engineers became masters of physics, logistics, and material science, solving problems that would challenge even today's experts. Their toolkit was simple, but their minds were extraordinary, relying on a profound understanding of leverage, hydraulics, and geometry to turn seemingly impossible dreams into stone and bronze reality. Perhaps the most universal challenge they all faced was the movement of massive weights. For the Great Pyramid, this meant transporting millions of multi-ton limestone blocks from quarries sometimes hundreds of miles away. We know from tomb paintings and archaeological evidence that they primarily used sledges, massive wooden platforms pulled by teams of laborers across prepared roads. A fascinating discovery in an ancient quarry revealed a pathway with regularly spaced holes alongside it, suggesting a sophisticated system where workers inserted wooden posts to act as anchors, allowing them to pull the sledges with ropes in a more controlled, ratcheting motion, overcoming friction inch by inch. To make the sledges glide more easily, they likely dampened the sand in front of them with water, a technique proven by modern experiments to cut the required pulling force in half. Once at the base of the pyramid, the real puzzle began: how to lift them hundreds of feet into the air. The most widely accepted theory involves a massive, spiraling ramp made of mud brick and rubble that corkscrewed around the rising structure, its slope gentle enough for teams to drag the blocks upward. As the pyramid grew taller, this ramp was extended and heightened, eventually being dismantled once the summit was reached, its materials absorbed back into the landscape. This mastery over heavy materials extended far beyond Egypt. For the Colossus of Rhodes, the challenge wasn't quarrying stone, but working with metal on a colossal scale. The sculptor Chairs and his team didn't cast the entire 110-foot statue in one piece. That would have been an impossible feat. Instead, they employed a technique known as direct lost wax casting on a gargantuan level. They began by building a massive internal armature, a skeleton of iron bars and stone blocks that outline the god's form. Over this framework, they sculpted the finer details in clay and wax. Then, they carefully covered this entire form in a fire-resistant clay mold, creating a thick shell. When they heated the mold, the wax inside melted and drained out, leaving a hollow space between the clay mold and the internal armature. Next, they poured molten bronze into this cavity, filling every crevice. Once the bronze cooled and hardened, workers broke away the outer clay mold, revealing a finished bronze plate that was then painstakingly hammered and polished to perfection. The statue was essentially a complex, enormous jigsaw puzzle, constructed from individually cast bronze plates bolted to the sturdy iron and stone core, growing slowly from the feet up as the scaffolding around it was enveloped by its own form. Water, too, was a force to be harnessed, most spectacularly for the legendary Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Keeping a towering, multi-terraced garden alive in an arid climate required a hydraulic system of breathtaking innovation. The solution was almost certainly a chain pump, a technology that had been used in Mesopotamia for centuries in simpler forms. This system would have involved a large, screw-like apparatus or a continuous loop of chain with buckets attached, positioned to lift water from the Euphrates River or a large storage cistern to the highest terrace. The power likely came from human labor, with workers walking on a treadmill to rotate the mechanism, endlessly hauling gallons of water to the summit. From this high point, the water could then cascade downward through a network of channels, pipes, and drains, irrigating each level in turn before being collected and recirculated. This wasn't just a garden, it was a complex, self-sustaining mechanical ecosystem, a testament to an engineer's ability to defy a desert environment through sheer cleverness. And we cannot overlook the precision that defined so many of these projects. The alignment of the Great Pyramid to the cardinal points with near-perfect accuracy suggests the use of sophisticated astronomical observation, perhaps using the pole star or the circular motion of the stars around the celestial pole to find true north. The construction of the Parthenon, while not a wonder itself, employed optical refinements that were likely used in wonders like the Temple of Artemis, intentionally curving lines and tilting columns to counter optical illusions and make the structure appear perfectly straight to the human eye. This attention to detail, this pursuit of perfection beyond mere function, reveals a mindset that saw engineering and art as inseparable partners. It was this fusion of brute force and delicate precision, of thousands of laborers directed by a few brilliant minds, that allowed humanity to reach for the heavens and against all odds actually grasp them. But to truly understand these marvels, we must look beyond the stone and metal, past the engineering genius, and into the very hearts and minds of the people who built them. For the ancient world was a place deeply intertwined with the divine, where the lines between the earthly and the celestial were beautifully blurred. These wonders were not merely feats of engineering, they were profound acts of faith, physical manifestations of mythology and religious belief woven directly into their foundations. They served as monumental bridges connecting the human realm to the world of the gods, making the invisible visible and the intangible breathtakingly real. Consider the statue of Zeus at Olympia. This was far more than a magnificent piece of art. It was the physical embodiment of the king of the gods himself. Ancient Greeks believed that to be in the presence of this statue was to stand before Zeus. The sculptor Phidias wasn't just creating a likeness, he was attempting to capture the very essence of divine power, majesty, and authority. The choice of materials was deeply symbolic: ivory for the skin to give an ethereal, otherworldly glow, and gold for the robes to represent unthinkable wealth and immortality. Athletes competing in the games would offer sacrifices and swear oaths at its feet, not to a representation of a god, but to the god they believed was actually present, watching their every move. The statue transformed the entire sanctuary of Olympia from a sports venue into a holy site, a place where victory was not just a personal achievement but a divine blessing. This same spiritual function defined the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus. It was one of the most important pilgrimage sites in the ancient world, drawing worshippers from across the Mediterranean. The goddess Artemis worshipped here was not the familiar virgin huntress of Greek myth, but a far older, more powerful fertility deity from Anatolia. Her statue, adorned with its mysterious symbols of life and abundance, was believed to have fallen directly from the heavens, making the temple its rightful home. For centuries, people journeyed great distances not just to admire the architecture, but to seek favor, offer precious gifts, and participate in rituals that connected them to this potent divine force. The temple was a bank of faith as much as a bank of treasure, a place where human hopes and fears were deposited at the altar of a goddess who controlled the very cycles of life and nature. Even the more secular-seeming wonders were steeped in mythological significance and purpose. The Mausoleum, while a tomb for a mortal ruler, was covered in sculptural friezes depicting scenes from Greek mythology, battles with Amazons, chariot races, and gatherings of gods. These weren't random decorations, they were a deliberate narrative strategy. By surrounding himself in death with images of heroes and gods, Mausolus was not just building a tomb. He was constructing a personal mythology, elevating himself and his wife Artemisia to a near-divine status for eternity. He was using the shared stories of his culture to cement his own legendary legacy. The Great Pyramid, though often viewed through a lens of pure engineering, was fundamentally a religious structure, a massive machine designed for a pharaoh's ascension to the afterlife. Its precise alignment with the stars wasn't just for show, it was a celestial staircase. The narrow shafts pointing towards specific constellations were believed to be pathways for the pharaoh's soul to travel to the imperishable stars, to join the sun god Ra in his eternal journey across the sky. Every block, every angle, every passage was infused with religious meaning, a permanent prayer in stone ensuring the god-king's safe passage to immortality. This deep intertwining of belief and construction reveals the central purpose of these wonders. They were the ultimate expression of a civilization's values, their attempts to answer life's biggest questions about power, death, and the divine. They gave form to their fears and their hopes, creating permanent, awe-inspiring points of contact with the gods they believed controlled their world. The stone and bronze were merely the medium. The real wonder was the profound, universal human need to reach for something greater than themselves and leave a mark that echoed through the ages. To truly grasp the power these wonders held, we must step into the sandals of those who first celebrated them, the ancient travelers, poets, and historians who journeyed across the known world to witness these marvels with their own eyes, or more often, to collect the breathtaking accounts of others. The most famous of these chroniclers was the Greek poet Antipater of Sidon, who, in the 2nd century before the Common Era, composed a poem that is essentially the oldest surviving travel bucket list. He didn't just describe the wonders, he expressed a raw, visceral reaction to them. Of the towering walls of Babylon, he wrote that they were surpassed only by the mighty pyramids. But it was the Temple of Artemis that truly stole his breath, leading him to declare, "But when I saw the sacred house of Artemis that towers to the clouds, the others were placed in the shade, for the sun himself has never looked upon its equal outside Olympus." This wasn't a dry architectural review, it was a record of pure, unadulterated awe. For Antipater and his contemporaries, these sites were not frozen relics of the past. They were living, breathing proof of human potential, inspiring a sense of wonder that transcended national borders and political rivalries. This act of list-making itself was a powerful engine for cultural exchange, creating a common itinerary for the educated elite of the Hellenistic world. Wealthy Greeks and Romans, embarking on their version of the Grand Tour, would seek out these sites as essential stops on a journey of cultural and intellectual refinement. A Roman senator or a merchant from Alexandria would feel a shared sense of purpose with a Greek scholar, all united by the desire to lay eyes on the same celebrated monuments. This shared cultural currency fostered a sense of interconnectedness across the vast expanse of the Mediterranean and beyond. Travelers would carry these stories home, sharing them in marketplaces and symposiums, which in turn inspired the next wave of pilgrims. The wonders became anchors in a vast mental map of the civilized world, points of reference that defined what was considered great, beautiful, and worthy of a long and often perilous journey. They were the ultimate conversation starters, the common ground for diplomats, traders, and philosophers alike. Yet, we must also remember that these ancient travelogues came with their own biases and limitations. Most of the writers who compiled the lists were Greek men, viewing the world through a distinctly Hellenistic lens. Their selections naturally favored sites within or on the fringes of the Greek sphere of influence. Marvels from Persia, India, or farther east were largely absent from these early lists, not because they weren't impressive, but because they existed outside this particular cultural orbit. Furthermore, it's highly unlikely that a single person like Antipater actually visited all 7 wonders. He almost certainly relied on a combination of second-hand accounts, earlier texts, and perhaps a bit of legendary embellishment. The description of the Hanging Gardens, for example, persists with such vivid detail despite a complete lack of contemporary Babylonian records, suggesting that some wonders lived more powerfully in the realm of story than in stone. This doesn't diminish their impact, it simply reveals that their power was as much about the idea of human achievement as it was about the physical reality. They were the ultimate symbols of a world that was becoming smaller, more connected, and increasingly aware of its own collective genius, inspiring generations to look beyond their own horizons and marvel at what others had built. If the ambition of these builders knew no bounds, the forces of nature certainly did. For all their grandeur and sophistication, most of the ancient wonders shared a common, humbling fate. They were ultimately brought low not by human hands, but by the immense, indifferent power of the earth itself. Earthquakes, in particular, emerged as the great destroyer of the classical world, a relentless force that repeatedly shook the foundations of these marvels until they could stand no more. The geography that made the Mediterranean a cradle of civilization, situated at the turbulent convergence of the African and Eurasian tectonic plates, also made it extraordinarily vulnerable. The same trade routes that spread ideas and wealth also carried tales of seismic destruction, a recurring reminder that human achievement was perpetually balanced on unstable ground. The Colossus of Rhodes provides one of the most dramatic examples. This bronze giant, a symbol of defiance and resilience, stood for a mere 56 years before the Earth intervened. In 226 BCE, a powerful earthquake struck the island, its tremors targeting the statue's greatest vulnerability, its knees. The precise engineering that allowed it to stand also created a point of immense stress, and with a catastrophic snap, the Colossus buckled, crashing down into enormous fragments. The Rhodians, heartbroken by the loss of their guardian, consulted the Oracle of Delphi for guidance. The response was a stunning and definitive refusal to rebuild. The oracle declared that the act of raising it had somehow displeased the god Helios. So the ruins remained where they fell for centuries, a strange and melancholic tourist attraction where visitors could marvel at the sheer scale of the disaster. Pliny the Elder noted that even in its broken state, the fallen giant was awe-inspiring, its scattered fingers larger than most entire statues. Its final fate was sealed centuries later not by another quake, but by economic necessity when the bronze rubble was sold off and carried away on a caravan of 900 camels to be melted down. A similar seismic fate awaited the magnificent Lighthouse of Alexandria. This beacon of human knowledge and safety stood for over a millennium, but its location on a slowly sinking coastline made it a prime target for the region's tectonic unrest. It endured a slow-motion demise through a series of devastating quakes. The first major blow came in 956 AD, damaging the upper sections and the Great Mirror. Another, more destructive tremor in 1303 shattered much of the octagonal middle section. The final, killing stroke arrived in 1323, when a massive earthquake reduced the once proud structure to a complete and utter ruin. The stones that had guided sailors for generations were later scavenged to build a medieval fortress on the very same site, a literal recycling of one era's wonder into another's practicality. The fate of the pharaohs is a poignant lesson in the slow, grinding power of nature. It wasn't a single cataclysm, but a repeated battering that eventually wore down even this most robust of structures. Fire, too, played its merciless role, proving especially destructive to wonders that relied on wood and other combustible materials. The Temple of Artemis at Ephesus, in its first glorious iteration, was famously destroyed not by an earthquake but by a single man's desire for infamy. Herostratus' act of arson in 356 BCE was a human-caused disaster, but it highlights the vulnerability of these wooden-roofed structures to flame. While the temple was famously rebuilt even grander in marble, its final end centuries later was likely a combination of factors. Declining pagan worship left it neglected, and it was probably damaged again by quakes before its remains were ultimately quarried for other buildings. The statue of Zeus at Olympia, a masterpiece of gold, ivory, and priceless wood, also met a fiery end. After being moved to Constantinople for safekeeping, the most widely accepted account places its destruction in a great fire that swept through the palace of Lausus in 475 AD. The very materials that gave the statue its lifelike radiance, the ivory panels and gold leaf, would have been consumed in moments, turning a millennium of devotion into ash and memory. This pattern of loss reveals a profound truth about our relationship with the physical world. The builders of these wonders demonstrated a breathtaking mastery over their environment. They moved mountains of stone, forged bronze giants, and lifted water to the sky. They believed with every right that they could shape the world to their will. Yet time and again, nature asserted its ultimate authority. An earthquake lasting mere minutes could undo centuries of labor. A single spark could erase 1,000 years of devotion. The fragility of these grandest achievements is not a mark of failure, but a defining part of their legacy. They stand as monuments not only to what humanity can build, but also to the powerful, unpredictable forces that we ultimately cannot control. Their ruins whisper a dual message of inspiration and humility. We are capable of creating the extraordinary, but we are also reminded that nothing we build is truly permanent. Yet for all their resilience against the elements, these stone and bronze titans faced an even more unpredictable and destructive force: humanity itself. Across centuries, the very civilizations that followed viewed these ancient marvels not as treasures to be protected, but as resources to be plundered, symbols to be erased, or fortifications to be built. The stones that had been laid with such reverence and ambition became mere building blocks for new empires, new religions, and new wars, their original meaning often lost to the urgent demands of the present. This was not the slow, indifferent erosion of nature, but the deliberate, calculated dismantling of memory, one block at a time. The story of the Mausoleum at Halicarnassus is a heartbreaking case study in this kind of targeted destruction. For nearly 17 centuries, this magnificent tomb defied earthquakes and the slow decay of time, standing as a proud memorial to a long-vanished king and queen. Its final end did not come from a tremor, but from the hands of the Knights of St. John in the early 15th century, as they fortified their castle against an impending invasion by the Ottoman Turks. The knights found themselves in desperate need of stone. The ruins of the Mausoleum, still rich with finely cut marble, presented a perfect quarry. They systematically dismantled the wonder, prying sculpted friezes from the walls and toppling columns to be crushed into lime for mortar or stacked into battlements. In a bitterly ironic twist, some of the most beautiful reliefs, including those depicting the battle between the Greeks and the Amazons, were placed face inward within the castle walls, inadvertently preserving their artistry from centuries of weathering while simultaneously burying the memory of what they once were. The knights weren't driven by malice toward history. They were simply practical men in a dangerous time, using the available materials to ensure their own survival. The wonder of Halicarnassus was thus sacrificed to the pragmatism of war, its stones repurposed to keep one culture standing by tearing down the legacy of another. A similar fate of purposeful reuse befell the remains of the Colossus of Rhodes. After lying in a magnificent rubble pile for 8 centuries, the bronze fragments were finally sold off in the 7th century AD by an Arab force that had captured the island. Needing capital and seeing no sacred value in the pagan artifact, the new rulers reportedly sold the metal to a traveling Jewish merchant from Edessa, requiring a caravan of 900 camels to haul it all away to be melted down and recast into coins, tools, and weapons. This act wasn't an angry demolition, it was a cold economic transaction. The giant was no longer a wonder to be marveled at, but a commodity to be liquidated, its cultural significance utterly invisible to those who saw only its raw monetary value. But perhaps the most visceral example of human conflict erasing a wonder is the burning of the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus. The first great temple was not toppled by an earthquake, but was deliberately set ablaze in 356 BCE by a man named Herostratus. His motive, as recorded by historians, was terrifyingly simple and modern. He sought fame. He believed that by destroying something so beautiful, so beloved, he could ensure his name would be remembered forever. The outraged citizens of Ephesus, attempting to thwart this monstrous vanity, passed a law forbidding anyone from ever speaking his name again, hoping to condemn him to oblivion. Yet the story was too sensational to be suppressed. Writers like Theopompus recorded the event, and Herostratus achieved his dark ambition, becoming the archetype for all those who would rather be infamous than forgotten. His story is a stark reminder that the human capacity for creation is always matched by a capacity for destruction, and that the desire for legacy can sometimes take a tragically twisted form. Beyond individual acts of arson or pragmatism, the broader sweep of war and shifting religious tides also played a devastating role. As Christianity and later Islam rose to dominance across the Mediterranean, the old pagan gods and their temples lost their sanctity in the eyes of the new order. Structures like the Temple of Artemis or the Statue of Zeus were no longer seen as houses of the divine, but as relics of a rejected past. Without the protective mantle of ongoing worship, they became vulnerable. Their sites were quarried for new churches and mosques, their very materials absorbed into the fabric of a new world that had little interest in preserving the old. This cyclical pattern of construction and destruction reveals a difficult truth about human history. We often build our future upon the rubble of the past, viewing the monuments of prior civilizations not with reverence, but as a convenient source of raw materials for our own ambitions. The wonder wasn't just lost, it was erased, its physical substance repurposed to tell a completely different story for a new age. While human hands and natural disasters have erased these marvels from our skyline, they haven't vanished without a trace. The relentless work of archaeologists over the past 2 centuries has slowly pulled these legends out of the realm of pure myth and back into the light of history, one fragment at a time. These digs are more than just treasure hunts. They are acts of forensic reconstruction, piecing together puzzles from scattered clues to give us a tangible connection to the ancient world's greatest achievements. The discoveries made at these sites don't just confirm that the wonders existed, they help us understand their staggering scale, their breathtaking artistry, and the incredible technical skill that went into their creation, offering us fleeting but powerful glimpses into their former glory. The story of rediscovering the mausoleum at Halicarnassus is a perfect example of this archaeological detective work. For centuries, the exact location of this fabled tomb was lost, its memory surviving only in ancient texts and the word it gave to our language. That changed in the 1850s when the British Museum sent an archaeologist named Charles Newton to modern-day Bodrum, Turkey, with a singular mission: find the mausoleum. He faced a daunting task. The entire area was covered by the sprawling town, and the medieval castle built by the Knights of St. John dominated the harbor. Newton began a systematic survey, digging test pits and questioning locals. His big break came when he observed that the walls of the castle itself were a bizarre architectural mosaic, containing numerous pieces of finely carved marble that clearly belonged to a much older, grander structure. He even found two massive green stone blocks that had been repurposed as millstones, which he identified as fragments of the mausoleum's grand staircase. Following these clues, he acquired and cleared a plot of land near the castle, and his team soon struck pay dirt. They uncovered the foundation trench, the underground burial chamber, though it had been looted in antiquity, and most spectacularly, a treasure trove of sculptural fragments. They found massive statues believed to be of Mausolus and Artemisia, colossal marble horses from the peak of the monument, and brilliantly detailed friezes depicting the battle between the Greeks and the Amazons. These friezes, which had been packed face down into the castle walls by the knights, were exceptionally well preserved, their dynamic figures and emotional intensity still stunning viewers today in the British Museum. Newton's excavation gave us the literal building blocks to understand the mausoleum's layout, its decorative program, and its hybrid architectural style, transforming it from a poetic legend into a documented, monumental reality. Similar groundbreaking work has been done at the site of the Temple of Artemis in Ephesus, though its story is one of greater frustration and tantalizing mystery. The temple's precise location was also lost for over a millennium, buried under many feet of silt from the meandering Cayster River. A British engineer named John Turtle Wood became obsessed with finding it in the 1860s, dedicating 6 arduous years to the search. He faced malaria, difficult terrain, and skeptical officials, tirelessly following clues from ancient texts. His moment of triumph finally came in 1869 when, after digging a massive 35-foot-deep shaft, his workers hit a magnificent marble pavement. He had found the foundation of the Great Temple, confirming its existence and its immense size. Later excavations, particularly by an Austrian team in the 20th century, revealed more details. The temple's complex foundation, designed to support its incredible weight on marshy ground, and a few column drums and sculptural fragments. Yet, compared to the mausoleum, very little of the Temple of Artemis remains in situ. The site is largely a single, re-erected column and a swampy field of foundation blocks, a stark and somewhat melancholy scene. This scarcity of physical evidence is a direct result of the temple's fate. As its religious significance waned, it was systematically quarried for other projects. Its magnificent marbles were carted away to build churches in Constantinople, fortifications, and local buildings. The archaeological record here is one of absence as much as presence, telling a powerful story of how a wonder can be so completely dismantled and absorbed back into the landscape that even its ruins are fleeting. Perhaps the most dramatic modern discoveries have come not from the earth but from the sea in the hunt for the last great wonder, the Lighthouse of Alexandria. For centuries, it was believed that every last stone of the pharaohs had been swallowed by the Mediterranean or built into the fortifications of the Kate Bay citadel. That changed in 1994 when a team of French underwater archaeologists, led by Jean-Yves Empereur, began diving in the murky waters of Alexandria's eastern harbor. What they found was nothing short of spectacular, a sprawling underwater graveyard of monumental granite and limestone blocks, some weighing up to 70 tons. Among them were enormous columns, sphinxes, and statues of pharaohs and Ptolemaic kings, all believed to have once adorned the lighthouse or the surrounding platform before they tumbled into the sea during the series of catastrophic earthquakes. Using sophisticated photogrammetry techniques to map the chaotic seabed, the team began to piece together a digital reconstruction of the lighthouse's likely appearance and scale. They discovered that many of the blocks showed clear signs of their second life, as medieval stonemasons had carved them with distinctive Arabic script and symbols before using them to build the citadel. These underwater ruins provide a unique, tangible link to the wonder's final days, offering physical proof of its destruction by quake and its subsequent reuse, allowing us to finally move beyond ancient texts and begin to understand the pharaohs not just as a myth, but as a real, monumental structure of incredible proportions. Each artifact pulled from the harbor floor is a silent witness to the day the earth shook and a sentinel of light fell into the sea. Even as archaeology brings us closer to these ancient marvels, some of their most captivating secrets remain stubbornly out of reach, protected by the veil of time. Perhaps no wonder is shrouded in more debate than the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. The core mystery isn't just about irrigation techniques or plant life, it's a fundamental question of existence. If they were in Babylon, why is there a complete absence of any mention in the vast cuneiform records of Nebuchadnezzar's reign? This silence is deafening for a project that would have been the most ambitious civil engineering feat of its age, requiring a constant, massive supply of water and labor. This glaring omission has led to a compelling and increasingly popular theory championed by historian Stephanie Daly. The gardens were real, but they were built over 300 miles to the north in the Assyrian capital of Nineveh by King Sennacherib. Her evidence is persuasive. Sennacherib's own palace inscriptions boast of a vast, intricate system of canals and aqueducts to bring water down from the mountains, and he describes a palace without a rival, with a garden watered by a revolutionary bronze screw device, a technology that matches later Greek descriptions perfectly. It's a tantalizing possibility that over centuries, the story of this Assyrian marvel was simply grafted onto the more famous city of Babylon, a case of mistaken identity that has confused historians for millennia. Whether the answer lies in Babylon, Nineveh, or perhaps nowhere at all, the very debate highlights how the passage of time can blur fact and legend into an inseparable whole. The Colossus of Rhodes presents a different kind of puzzle, one of physical form rather than location. Everyone agrees it was a statue of the sun god Helios, and we know it stood approximately 110 feet tall. But its precise posture and placement remain a subject of lively speculation, largely because it stood for such a short time and left no detailed visual records. The most enduring popular image of a giant straddling the harbor entrance with ships passing between its legs is almost certainly a medieval invention. From an engineering perspective, constructing a hollow bronze figure of that scale with its legs spread wide apart across a busy waterway would have been nearly impossible with ancient technology. The harbor mouth is simply too wide, and the structural stress on the bronze plates at the hips would have been catastrophic. A more plausible theory, based on studies of how such statues were built and the layout of the Rhodian harbor, suggests the Colossus stood in a more traditional, solid pose on one side of the entrance, perhaps on a massive breakwater, serving as a guiding sentinel rather than a literal gateway. Its arm may have been raised, holding a torch, but it most likely did not bestride the port. This recalibration of our mental image doesn't diminish the wonder. It replaces a physical impossibility with a more believable, yet still utterly astounding, feat of engineering and artistic ambition. Then there is the case of the Great Pyramid, a wonder we can still touch, yet one that guards its secrets closely. The enduring mystery here is not if it was built, but exactly how. The ramp system theory is widely accepted, but its precise configuration is hotly contested. Was it a single, straight ramp growing longer and longer as the pyramid rose? That would have required an impossibly long and massive ramp by the project's end. A more elegant theory proposes a ramp that spiraled around the exterior of the growing structure, but this would have obscured the crucial sightlines needed for the pyramid's perfect alignment. A recent and fascinating hypothesis from architect Jean-Pierre Houdin suggests an internal spiral ramp, built within the body of the pyramid itself, used in conjunction with a straight external ramp for the first third of the construction. This would solve the problem of obstructed views for alignment, while also providing a more efficient means of moving blocks higher up. Proving this, however, is incredibly difficult, as it would require non-invasive scanning technology capable of peering deep into the millions of tons of stone to find evidence of a hidden, sealed-off ramp, a technological challenge we are only just beginning to meet. Some mysteries are simply locked inside the monument, waiting for science to find the right key. These unanswered questions are not failures of history, they are an essential part of the wonder's enduring magic. The gaps in our knowledge are the spaces where our imagination is allowed to play, where scholars and enthusiasts alike can debate, theorize, and dream. They remind us that the ancient world is not a puzzle we will ever completely solve, and that a degree of mystery is what keeps these legends alive and pulsing with fascination. The fact that we are still asking how and why and where after more than 2,000 years is the ultimate testament to their power. They were built to inspire awe, and in their mysteries they continue to do so. Without a single stone of the Hanging Gardens to examine or a fragment of the Colossus to measure, one might think these wonders would have faded into obscurity. Instead, they found a second life, reborn again and again, not in marble or bronze, but on canvas, in ink, and through the limitless power of human imagination. For centuries, artists have served as the guardians of these legends, stepping into the void left by history to paint pictures of what might have been, ensuring the wonders never truly died. This artistic tradition began in earnest during the Renaissance, a period defined by a reawakening of interest in the classical world. European artists, armed with the often florid descriptions from ancient Greek and Roman texts, but with no physical ruins to reference, were faced with a thrilling challenge. They had to become architects of the imagination, blending the classical ideals they were rediscovering with the architectural styles and artistic sensibilities of their own time. The result was a breathtaking gallery of anachronistic masterpieces that said as much about the era that created them as they did about the ancient past they sought to depict. Consider the legendary Dutch artist M.C. Escher, who in the 1930s turned his mind to the Tower of Babel, a biblical marvel often grouped with the ancient wonders. His woodcut, simply titled The Tower of Babel, is a masterpiece of intricate, impossible geometry, showing the structure as a dizzying, layered spiral reaching into the clouds. While not one of the seven, his approach captures the essence of how artists have treated these subjects, less as historical reconstructions and more as vessels for exploring grand themes of ambition, infinity, and the sublime. More typical are the lush oil paintings of Renaissance and Baroque masters who portrayed the wonders as they imagined them, often populating them with figures in contemporary dress. These paintings were not meant to be accurate documentaries, they were declarations. They placed these legendary achievements from pagan antiquity within a Christian European worldview, appropriating their grandeur and claiming that legacy for a new age. The wonder itself became a backdrop for human drama, a stage for showcasing artistic skill in rendering perspective, light, and the human form. The invention of the printing press and the proliferation of engraving techniques in the 17th and 18th centuries democratized these visions, carrying them beyond the palaces of the wealthy and into the studies of the growing middle class. Grand volumes and travel guides featured intricate engravings of the wonders, each artist offering their own interpretation. The Colossus of Rhodes was a particular favorite, almost always shown in the iconic stance bestriding the harbor mouth, a powerful and enduring image that persists in popular culture to this day despite its engineering improbability. These prints were not constrained by the dry facts of archaeology, which was still in its infancy. They were free to be spectacular, to emphasize drama and scale over historical precision. They fed a public hungry for the exotic and the magnificent, creating a shared visual language for these lost monuments that was, in many ways, more powerful than the scattered and uncertain historical records. This artistic mission has evolved dramatically with technology. The modern era has traded the painter's brush for the digital artist's tablet, and the goal has shifted from romantic interpretation to informed reconstruction. Today's artists and archaeologists work in tandem, using advanced software, 3D modeling, and a growing body of archaeological evidence to build digital versions of these wonders with a level of detail Phidias or Chairs could never have imagined. They start with the known facts, the dimensions of the foundation at Olympia, the descriptions of the Zeus statue's materials, the fragments of the Mausoleum's friezes. Then they digitally sculpt layer by layer, using their knowledge of ancient engineering principles and architectural styles to fill in the gaps. The result is no longer a static painting but a dynamic, explorable model. We can now take a virtual walk through the shaded colonnade of the Temple of Artemis, look up at the gleaming ivory face of Zeus, or watch a simulation of the chain pump system that might have watered the hanging gardens. These digital recreations are our closest window into the past, a fusion of art, science, and historical detective work that allows us to experience the scale and the awe of these places in a way a written description or a static engraving never could. This centuries-long artistic endeavor, from Renaissance oils to modern pixels, reveals a profound and enduring human need. We are not satisfied with knowing that these wonders once existed. We have a deep-seated desire to see them, to visualize their glory and place ourselves, even for a moment, in their shadow. Artists across the ages have provided that vision, each generation using its own tools and its own world-view to keep the flame of these legends alive. They have built a bridge of imagination across the centuries, ensuring that even as the stones crumbled and the bronze was melted down, the wonders would continue to captivate, inspire, and remind us of the breathtaking heights human creativity can achieve. The legacy of these ancient marvels did not vanish with their physical forms. Instead, it was quietly absorbed into the very DNA of our modern world, echoing through our skylines, our stories, and our collective imagination. That profound desire to build upward, to create structures that dominate the landscape and define a city's identity, finds its earliest inspiration in wonders like the Lighthouse of Alexandria and the Mausoleum at Halicarnassus. The pharaohs, with its three-tiered design of a square base, octagonal midsection, and cylindrical top, established the essential architectural blueprint for every lighthouse that followed for centuries. From the towering Eddystone Lighthouse off the coast of England to the classic designs that guard the rocky shores of New England, the functional form of a stable base tapering to a focused light source is a direct homage to that first great sentinel. Its name itself became immortalized. The word pharaohs is the root for lighthouse in languages from French, fair, to Italian and Spanish, pharaoh, a permanent linguistic monument to its enduring influence. This architectural borrowing extends far beyond functional buildings into the realm of pure symbolism and statement. The concept of the skyscraper, those glass and steel mountains that scrape the clouds of modern metropolises, carries the same spirit of ambition and civic pride that drove the Rhodians to build the Colossus. While we don't build statues that bestride harbors, we erect corporate headquarters and observation towers that serve the same purpose: to announce economic power, technological prowess, and a city's place on the world stage. The Willis Tower in Chicago or the Burj Khalifa in Dubai are our modern colossi, not of a sun god but of human enterprise. Similarly, the grand, purpose-built tombs of the modern era owe a significant debt to the Mausoleum. Its revolutionary fusion of different architectural styles, Greek columns, Egyptian pyramid, Near Eastern sculpture, created a whole new genre of commemorative architecture. You can see its DNA in Napoleon's tomb at Les Invalides in Paris, with its massive dome rising over a classical stone base, or in the Grant's tomb in New York City, a clear echo of that layered, monumental approach to honoring the dead. These structures are not merely tombs, they are secular mausoleums designed to translate personal legacy into stone and mortar for public veneration. Perhaps even more pervasive than their physical influence is their powerful grip on our popular culture, where they have become universal shorthand for the impossible, the legendary, and the lost. The entertainment industry continually returns to this well of awe, using the wonders as backdrops for adventure and mystery. Films like Night at the Museum, Battle of the Smithsonian, bring the Smithsonian Institution to life with a memorable comedic cameo by the capuchin monkey version of the Colossus of Rhodes. More dramatically, the God of War video game series immerses players in a mythic landscape where they can literally climb the ruins of the Colossus and battle Poseidon within the watery remains of the city of Atlantis, a place often conflated with the wonder of the pharaoh's lighthouse. These are not just settings, they are characters in their own right, their grandeur heightening the stakes of the narrative. Literature, from historical fiction to fantasy epics, uses the wonders to ground tales in a sense of epic scale. Clive Cussler's Treasure centers a plot around the discovery of the remains of the Library of Alexandria, intrinsically linked to the wonder of the lighthouse that guarded its knowledge. Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson and the Olympians series frequently has its demigod characters interact with the ruins of the ancient world, reinforcing the idea that these places are where magic and history collide. This cultural repurposing goes beyond direct representation, seeping into our very language and the frameworks we use for understanding achievement. The term mausoleum is the most obvious example, a word born from a specific tomb that now describes any large above-ground burial structure. Similarly, we describe anything of immense size or scale as colossal, a direct linguistic gift from the fallen giant of Rhodes. Museums around the world, from the British Museum in London to the Pergamon Museum in Berlin, are themselves modern temples to human achievement, and their most visited galleries are often those housing the sculptural fragments from the mausoleum or the reconstructed remains of ancient altars, creating a direct, tangible lineage between the ancient wonder and the modern institution. We even create our own modern lists of wonders, voting on new 7 wonders of the world, a practice that acknowledges the original ancient list as the ultimate benchmark for global architectural magnificence. This endless cycle of reference, homage, and reimagining proves that these 7 creations are more than historical footnotes. They have become permanent archetypes, a set of shared stories and symbols that allow us to speak a common language of ambition, reminding us that the drive to create, to be remembered, and to reach for the heavens is a thread that connects the ancient engineer to the modern architect, the classical poet to the contemporary game designer. This journey through the 7 ancient wonders reveals a fascinating truth. The very idea of what constitutes a wonder is not a fixed point in history, but a mirror reflecting the values, capabilities, and aspirations of the society that creates the list. The original canon, compiled by Greek poets and travelers, was a product of its time, a Hellenistic grand tour of awe-inspiring structures within their known world. Their criteria were clear: immense scale, staggering artistry, and a profound embodiment of divine or political power. these were man-made marvels that demonstrated a triumphant mastery over the physical environment, whether by moving mountains of stone or forging bronze giants. They were, above all, architectural achievements meant to inspire a very specific kind of awe, reverence for the gods and admiration for the rulers who could command such projects. Fast forward to the modern era, and the concept has dramatically expanded. In 2007, a global poll elected the new 7 wonders of the world, a list that includes only one structure from the ancient original, the Great Pyramid, which was granted honorary status. This new list, featuring sites like the Great Wall of China, Christ the Redeemer in Rio, and the Colosseum in Rome, still celebrates monumental architecture, but the context has shifted. These wonders often represent cultural heritage, historical endurance, and shared human history more than direct divine worship. The Colosseum isn't a temple to a god, but a monument to Roman engineering and public spectacle. The Great Wall is a testament to national defense and perseverance. The awe they inspire is tied to their historical narrative and their survival against the odds, broadening the definition beyond sheer physical grandeur. Perhaps the most significant evolution in our thinking is the formal recognition of the natural world. UNESCO World Heritage Sites, a list that includes both cultural and natural locations, explicitly places the splendor of nature on equal footing with human achievement. Places like the Great Barrier Reef, the Grand Canyon, or Mount Everest are now enshrined as wonders not for anything we built, but for the breathtaking power of geological and biological forces that created them. This represents a profound shift in perspective, from a world view where humanity sought to dominate and impress upon nature, to one where we stand in humbled awe of its majesty and recognize our responsibility to protect it. The wonder is no longer in our defiance of natural forces, but in our appreciation of them. Furthermore, the modern lens has widened to include achievements of a different kind, intellectual and scientific marvels. We now speak of the Large Hadron Collider, the International Space Station, or the Human Genome Project as wonders of our age. These are not structures meant to be looked at, but complex systems of knowledge and collaboration that push the boundaries of human understanding. Their scale is measured not in qubits or stadiums, but in data, energy, and international cooperation. The awe they inspire is cerebral, a marvel at the collective human intellect and its ability to unravel the mysteries of the universe. This marks a journey from worshipping external gods to probing the fundamental laws of reality itself. Ultimately, the evolution from the ancient list to our contemporary understanding tells a story about us. The ancient wonders were declarations of power aimed at the gods and rival kingdoms. Our modern wonders often serve as bridges, connecting cultures across borders, linking us to our past and reminding us of our place within a vast and fragile ecosystem. The core emotion of wonder remains, but its focus has transformed. It's less about asserting dominance over our environment and more about understanding our connection to it, celebrating not just what we can build, but also what we can discover, preserve, and collectively achieve. But what if you could step through time and stand in the very shadow of these giants? Today, the same spirit of innovation that built the wonders is now being used to resurrect them, not in stone but in the digital realm. Through the magic of cutting-edge three-dimensional modeling and virtual reality, historians, architects, and technologists are collaborating to bring these lost monuments back to life with an accuracy that would astonish the ancient writers who first described them. This isn't just guesswork, it's a sophisticated form of digital archaeology. Teams start by compiling every shred of evidence available. The precise dimensions of a foundation trench excavated in Turkey, the descriptions of a statue's materials from a Roman poet, the scale of a figure on an ancient coin. They feed this data into powerful software where they can virtually sculpt each element, applying known principles of ancient engineering and architectural styles to fill in the gaps where the historical record falls silent. The result is a breathtakingly immersive experience. you can now put on a headset and find yourself walking through the lush, terraced gardens of Babylon, hearing the gentle cascade of water from hidden pumps. You can look up from the base of the Colossus of Rhodes and truly grasp its staggering scale, or stand in the temple at Olympia and watch light from the doorway glint off the ivory and gold statue of Zeus. These reconstructions are dynamic too. Researchers can run simulations to test theories like the flow of water through the Hanging Gardens irrigation system or the structural stresses on the Colossus's legs, turning artistic interpretations into validated engineering models. This technology is more than just a tool for entertainment. It's a powerful new frontier for education and historical research, allowing us to not just read about these marvels, but to experience their awe-inspiring presence for ourselves, ensuring their legacy continues to inspire wonder for generations to come. Beyond their physical remains and legendary status, the Seven Wonders have carved out a vital and enduring role within the very fabric of education, serving as a dynamic gateway to the ancient world for students of all ages. In history classrooms, they are far more than a list of names to memorize. They are a vibrant narrative tool. A teacher introducing the Hanging Gardens isn't just presenting a potential myth, but is opening a detective case that invites students to weigh evidence, analyze conflicting primary sources from Greek and Babylonian records, and engage in critical debate about how history is written and whose stories get preserved. This single topic can illuminate the vast trade networks of the Hellenistic world, the political propaganda of rulers like Mausoleum, and the religious practices surrounding sites like the Temple of Artemis. The wonders become anchors in time, making the chronology of empires from the Egyptians to the Romans tangible and interconnected, illustrating how cultures influenced one another through shared stories of architectural ambition. The study of these marvels also provides a foundational masterclass in ancient engineering principles, demonstrating sophisticated concepts with breathtaking clarity. The Great Pyramid's precise alignment to true north becomes a captivating lesson in practical astronomy, showing how builders used the stars as a celestial compass. The hypothesized ramp systems for its construction introduce fundamental physics, exploring the mechanics of leverage, friction, and the simple machines that enabled humans to move impossible weights. The legend of the Colossus's internal iron and stone framework offers a perfect analogy for modern structural engineering and the importance of a strong support system, while the Lighthouse of Alexandria's legendary mirror sparks discussions about the science of optics and light projection. These are not abstract theories, they are solved and unsolved problems etched in stone, inviting students to think like ancient engineers and appreciate the sheer ingenuity required to turn a visionary design into a physical reality. Furthermore, the wonders offer an unparalleled lens through which to view the artistic and cultural values of antiquity. The Chrysler-Fontaine technique of the Zeus statue reveals the immense value placed on materials like ivory and gold and the painstaking skill required to work them. The sculptural friezes from the Mausoleum, depicting battles with Amazons, provide a direct window into mythological storytelling and the ways art was used to convey power, heroism, and legacy. By comparing the artistic styles, the idealized Greek form of Zeus with the more ancient, symbolic representation of Artemis at Ephesus, students can trace the evolution of artistic expression and the cross-pollination of ideas across different civilizations. This interdisciplinary approach shows how art, religion, and politics were inextricably linked, with each wonder serving as a massive canvas expressing a civilization's deepest beliefs and highest aspirations. Ultimately, the greatest lesson the Seven Wonders teach is one of interconnectedness. They shatter the outdated notion of ancient civilizations existing in isolated bubbles. The Greek poets who wrote about the pyramids were acknowledging Egyptian achievement. The influence of Egyptian pyramid design can be seen in the top of the Mausoleum, a tomb built for a Persian governor in a Greek style. This network of marvels spread from the Mediterranean to Mesopotamia creates a map of cultural exchange, inspiring a global perspective that is more crucial now than ever. They teach us that the drive to create, to innovate, and to leave a mark that transcends a single lifetime is a universal human impulse, one that connected the ancient world then and continues to connect us to our shared past now, fueling curiosity and wonder in every new generation that discovers their story. But what is it about this particular wonder that allowed it to defy the relentless march of time when all the others ultimately succumbed? The secret to the Great Pyramid's incredible longevity lies in a powerful combination of ingenious design, a strategically chosen location, and a generous measure of sheer geological luck. Unlike the temples and statues that were plundered for their valuable metals or the harborside marvels vulnerable to earthquakes, the pyramid's enduring presence is a story written in stone, location, and circumstance, offering a masterclass in how to build for eternity. Its construction was the first and most crucial layer of its defense. The pyramid is not a hollow structure. It is an almost solid mass of millions of limestone blocks, weighing an estimated 6 million tons in total. This sheer, overwhelming density made it incredibly resistant to the elements. While wind and sand could wear away at its smooth outer casing stones over centuries, they could never hope to dismantle its colossal core. The original builders also understood their materials perfectly. The inner chambers and passageways, which are the most vulnerable points in any large structure, were built with enormous, immensely strong blocks of red granite, a far harder stone than limestone, quarried from over 500 miles away. This strategic use of materials, softer stone for the bulk, incredibly hard stone for the critical structural points, created a monument that was both massive and resilient. Furthermore, the pyramid's simple, powerful shape is inherently stable. The wide base and sloping sides distribute its incredible weight evenly across the bedrock beneath it, making it highly resistant to shearing forces like high winds or tremors. It is a form that has been tested by millennia and found to be fundamentally sound, a lesson in strength through geometry that we still study today. Location provided the second vital layer of protection. The Giza Plateau on the edge of the vast western desert was deliberately chosen by the ancient Egyptians. It was sacred high ground associated with the setting sun and the realm of the dead, but it was also incredibly practical. Situated on the outskirts of the bustling Nile Valley and its major population centers, the pyramid was spared the fate of structures like the Temple of Artemis, which stood in the heart of a city that was constantly rebuilt, expanded, and fought over for centuries. The valuable stones of the pyramid's smooth white casing were indeed eventually looted over the millennia to build mosques and fortresses in nearby Cairo, but its remote location meant this was a slow, difficult process of quarrying rather than a rapid demolition. It was simply too much effort for later civilizations to completely dismantle this mountain of stone for building materials when more accessible quarries were available. This relative isolation insulated it from the urban renewal, targeted destruction during wars, and the constant recycling of building materials that consumed so many other ancient monuments. It stood apart, a silent sentinel watching the rise and fall of empires from a safe distance. Finally, the pyramid benefited from a geological fortune that its coastal counterparts lacked. The Giza Plateau is composed of a massive limestone bedrock, a stable and solid foundation that has barely shifted in over 4,500 years. Compare this to the fate of the Lighthouse of Alexandria, which was built on a coastline gradually sinking into the Mediterranean and was shaken apart by a series of earthquakes along a major fault line. Or the Colossus of Rhodes, also toppled by a quake on its seismically active island. The ground beneath Giza has remained remarkably stable, providing an unwavering platform for the world's heaviest building. This geological luck, combined with its brilliant engineering and strategic location, created a perfect storm of preservation. The Great Pyramid endures not as a ruin but as a testament. It is a permanent reminder of the ancient world's profound understanding of their environment, their materials, and their place in the cosmos. It stands because it was built not just for glory, but for forever. Perhaps the most persistent and misleading myth is the idea that the Great Pyramid was built by legions of oppressed slaves, a dramatic narrative popularized by Hollywood epics and romanticized stories. The archaeological evidence, however, paints a vastly different and far more fascinating picture. Excavations led by Dr. Mark Lehner and Dr. Zohai Hawass at Giza have uncovered the workers' town, revealing not a penal colony but a highly organized community. These laborers were not slaves, they were skilled, respected, and well cared for state employees. Their bones show signs of medical treatment and healing fractures, proving they received care and were not worked to death. They were paid in bread, beer, and other provisions, and they worked in rotating crews, with some teams even naming themselves with proud titles like the Friends of Khufu or the Drunkards of Menkaure. This was a national project, a form of civic duty that provided work during the annual inundation of the Nile when farming was impossible. The construction of the pyramid was a unifying endeavor that likely strengthened the Egyptian state, not a project of brutal oppression. Another widely held but physically impossible belief is that the Colossus of Rhodes bestrode the harbor entrance, allowing ships to sail majestically between its legs. This captivating image, which dates to the Middle Ages long after the statue's destruction, is a triumph of imagination over engineering. The actual harbor mouth at Rhodes is roughly 150 meters wide. For a statue 110 feet tall to straddle that gap, its legs would need to be spread so far apart that the immense structural stress, especially on the bronze plates at the hips and knees, would have caused an immediate and catastrophic collapse. Furthermore, the logistical nightmare of constructing a hollow bronze giant over a busy, active waterway with ancient technology is almost unthinkable. A far more plausible theory, based on the engineering principles of the time and the layout of the port, suggests the Colossus stood in a more traditional, solid pose on a prominent breakwater or hill overlooking the harbor entrance. It served as a guiding sentinel and a symbol of the city's protection, not a literal gateway, a testament to Rhodian ingenuity rather than a physical impossibility. Even the existence of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon is shrouded in a misconception of its own, that its absence from contemporary Babylonian records is a minor historical hiccup rather than a monumental red flag. For a construction project of such alleged scale and complexity requiring a revolutionary irrigation system to lift water from the Euphrates River hundreds of feet into the air, the silence in the meticulous court diaries, economic tablets, and royal inscriptions of Nebuchadnezzar II is not just curious, it is deafening. These records detail everything from the rations for foreign workers to the precise materials used for far more modest constructions. Yet they contain not a single mention of this engineering marvel, its upkeep, or its massive daily water requirements. This profound silence is the primary fuel for the compelling theory that the gardens were not in Babylon at all, but were a magnificent Assyrian achievement in Nineveh, mistakenly relocated in later Greek accounts and forever altering our perception of Babylonian grandeur. We must also clear away the romantic notion that all seven wonders were universally agreed upon and static for centuries. The canon was surprisingly fluid in antiquity. Different ancient writers proposed slightly different lists. Some included the legendary walls of Babylon or the magnificent palace of Cyrus at Persepolis instead of the Lighthouse of Alexandria, which appeared on later lists. The number 7 was likely chosen not for its accuracy but for its powerful symbolic value in the ancient world, representing perfection and completeness. This reminds us that the list is a cultural snapshot, a collection of marvels that particularly captivated the Greek imagination during the Hellenistic period, not an immutable decree from history. It was a testament to what these specific travelers and poets found most awe-inspiring in their world, a perspective that has been wonderfully preserved but should not be mistaken for an exhaustive scientific catalogue. By separating these enduring myths from the archaeological truth, we don't diminish the wonders, we actually bring their real stories into sharper, more brilliant focus, appreciating the genuine human achievement behind them without the need for cinematic exaggeration. There is a profound and poignant magic in the fact that these 7 creations are almost entirely lost to us. If they all stood today, pristine and complete, they would be incredible, but would they be dreamy? Their physical absence is what grants them an eternal life in our imagination. We are not constrained by the reality of cracked marble or weathered bronze. Instead, we are free to rebuild them in our minds, each time adorning them with our own ideals of beauty and grandeur. They have become the ultimate catalysts for daydreams, inviting us to project our own visions of perfection onto their empty frames. This isn't a failure of history, it is a gift. The void they left behind is not an empty space, but a canvas upon which every generation can paint its own masterpiece of what might have been. This dreaminess is deeply tied to their representation of a universal, almost aching human aspiration, the desire to create something beautiful that will last forever. Every civilization, in its own way, grapples with its mortality. We know our time is limited, our empires will fade, and our names may be forgotten. These wonders are a defiant shout against that silence. They are the ultimate expression of that hope, that through art, through engineering, through sheer force of will, we can carve a piece of ourselves into the timeline of history that will endure long after we are gone. The pharaoh who built a pyramid, the governor who commissioned a mausoleum, the people of Rhodes who forged a colossus from the tools of their defeated enemy, they were all participating in the same fundamental human ritual. They were sending a message in a bottle across the ocean of time, a message that simply says, "We were here, we mattered, look what we could do." And that is precisely why their ultimate failure to achieve literal permanence adds such a powerful, poetic layer to their story. The irony is exquisite and deeply moving. These monuments, built to defy time, were ultimately conquered by it. The Colossus stood for mere decades, the statue of Zeus was consumed by fire, the Temple of Artemis was quarried for its stone. This fragility is not a mark of their insignificance, but the very source of their enduring power. Their fall reminds us of our own shared vulnerability. It creates a bond of empathy across millennia, connecting our modern anxieties to the hopes and fears of those ancient builders. We look at their shattered legacy and see our own dreams of legacy reflected back at us, and we understand that the attempt itself, the brave, audacious, beautiful attempt, is what truly constitutes greatness. The dream was not to build something that would never fall, but to build something worth remembering even after it did. This resonance is why they continue to captivate us in a way that perhaps no modern structure ever could. A skyscraper is a marvel of current technology, but it exists in our present. We understand its materials, its construction cranes, its blueprints. The ancient wonders, by contrast, are shrouded in the mist of legend. They feel like gifts from a different world, one where magic and mythology might have still brushed against the edges of reality. We are fascinated by the gaps in our knowledge, the missing how, the debated where, the mysterious why. These unanswered questions are the hooks that keep us coming back, the puzzle boxes that generations of historians, archaeologists, and dreamers have tried to unlock. They are not closed chapters, but open invitations to keep exploring, to keep wondering. Ultimately, the 7 wonders of the ancient world endure not as a list of tourist destinations, but as a permanent part of our cultural consciousness. They are archetypes of human ambition, symbols of our highest potential and our most humbling limitations. They teach us that the most powerful creations are often those that live on in the space between memory and imagination, between the stone we can touch and the story we yearn to believe. They are a beautiful, melancholy, and endlessly inspiring reminder that while all things must eventually turn to dust, the dreams that built them are truly eternal. And so our journey through these 7 testaments to human ambition draws to a close. We have wandered through the echoing halls of vanished marvels, from the enduring solidity of the Great Pyramid to the almost mythical lushness of the Hanging Gardens, from the divine presence of Zeus's statue to the guiding flame of the pharaoh's lighthouse. Each one, in its own way, represents a different facet of our eternal drive to reach beyond our grasp, to touch the divine, to defy mortality, to master our environment, and to simply create something so beautiful it would etch our name into the memory of the world itself. They are not just a list of tourist attractions from the ancient past. They are the foundational pillars of our shared cultural imagination, a permanent reminder that long before steel and silicon, humanity possessed a vision that could move mountains and a spirit that dared to challenge the gods. The true legacy of these wonders stretches far beyond their crumbled stones and lost bronze. They live on in the very words we use: mausoleum, colossal, and in the architectural principles that still guide our greatest constructions. They challenge us to see the ancient world not as a primitive prelude to our modern era, but as a period of breathtaking sophistication and artistry, where ingenuity triumphed over the limitations of technology. Their stories, a potent mix of confirmed fact and enduring mystery, continue to captivate because they speak to something universal within us: the profound desire to build, to create, and to be remembered. They teach us that while empires fall and even the mightiest stone will eventually dust, the dreams that conceived them are truly indestructible. Now we hand the question over to you. As you look back on these 7 legends, which one captures your imagination most powerfully? Is it the stoic, timeless certainty of the Great Pyramid, the last sentinel standing guard over the millennia? Or does your mind wander to the dreamlike, impossible beauty of the Hanging Gardens, a paradise suspended in the air that may have been the greatest story ever told? Perhaps it's the tragic, noble figure of the Colossus of Rhodes, a giant forged from the tools of war that stood for peace, only to be felled by the earth itself. Let us know in the comments below which wonder you find the most dreamy and why. Your perspective adds a new chapter to their ongoing story, and that leads us to one final thrilling thought. The ancient list was never meant to be a closed book. It was a celebration of the incredible, a snapshot of what one generation deemed the height of human achievement. So what will be the 7 wonders of our own age, as judged by generations 2,000 years from now? Will it be the silent, profound data cathedrals of the Internet, the International Space Station orbiting as a beacon of global cooperation, or perhaps a yet-to-be-built marvel that will solve our greatest challenges? The urge to wonder is a human constant. The drive to build is our legacy. The next chapter of awe is waiting to be written.